Let's start this week's Checkpoint podcast on the Destiny 2 lore. Welcome to Checkpoint Podcast, gentlemen. You are live.
All right.
We're doing introductions.
Okay. How's it going, folks? I'm S94. I'm a veteran of the thing, and man, it makes it sound like I'm doing Alcoholics Anonymous. Restart.
We don't have to care about being all like official or anything. Like we're just say what your experience with Destiny 2 is.
I mean, do you want to go real names, or do you just want to go?
Just do whatever the hell you want. I keep saying we should
do real names because we're a no-name podcast, and we just start talking. No one's knowing who the fuck we are.
Yeah, just do whatever.
Mine was just our names. I would just.
This is B-Chan. I have almost no experience on Destiny 2. I've only played through the campaign once. I am nothing like the rest of these insane fucks that have thousands of hours of Destiny. You guys introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm the guy with 1,200 hours of D1, and I've probably have worse than D2. I haven't checked, but I also haven't played. I haven't played recently, so kind of. You tempted me to look at it right now, but yeah, I've put at least 1,200 hours in D1.
Good God.
It's ate a shit ton of my time. It's become a giant passion. I have every Moments of Triumph shirt. I have the Thunderlord shirt. I really wanted that Thorn shirt, but I fizzled off because, I mean, due to the whole concept of how Osiris was treated, being this big giant thing that was hyped up, and he was like the guardian that was exiled from the city, and he's the best warlock, and he was very big into Vex technology, which is a very interesting point at the time, and for him just to be kind of brushed off, it's like kind of shit off. And then I came back around Forsaken, and I just like, I'm forever alone on fucking, because Destiny 2 PC, so mostly solo player. And I mean, I recently just picked it up again with all the annual content, but I was just paying attention to the lore and story and how intricate it gets and how just deep it gets. We're about halfway in now, and I'm excited for the other half.
Oh yeah, it is.
Daniel?
Yeah, so I am Daniel, otherwise known as Nogar the Dragon Runner, otherwise known as Macatad, and I have played Destiny since the very first beta for the first game. Took a break for the last year of D1, which is known as Rise of Iron, and then came back for Destiny 2 and have been pretty much a constant player of it ever since, occasionally taking short breaks when I felt, burnt out from certain content, but for the most part I've been loving every minute of it.
Andrew?
Hi, so my name's Andrew. I am also known as Regulus. I have played Destiny since the dawn of time. I've actually participated in the beta as well. I primarily played on Xbox up until I switched over to PC for Destiny 2, and I'm pretty much the lore master, so I basically made sure to read up on basically everything Destiny. So I'll try my best to convey what I have.
I'm curious to see that. And Pac?
Hey, my name's Pac. Also acted high. I just started to play Destiny 2 around when it first launched on PC in October, I think. So pretty fresh off the boat. I try to play it regularly, but I have the gist of what's been going on.
So the question that was not answered for Andrew and Pac and Daniel: How many hours? How many hours do y'all have on Destiny?
Oh, okay.
Uncountable. Absolutely uncountable.
I'm racing on Destiny.com.
I mean, I think I have 600 hours on my warlock.
On just one, I'm guessing though.
100 on my Titan, and 100's like the least, so I don't even know how much I have.
I looked up once before, but I don't remember. I'm looking up right now.
I don't even know how much
I believe my Destiny 2 has more, but I was offline most of the time, so it didn't get recorded by Wasted by Destiny, so I probably have for D2 close to 800 or 600, I don't know. It's a lot.
God
it's
damn.
a lot.
I mean, we'll just leave it there.
Well, I'm in the top 6% of Destiny 2 players when it comes to time played.
God damn!
I am currently sitting at 910 hours.
Jesus Christ! I don't know how much.
How do we check this again? I don't even know.
Time wasted it's wasted on Destiny.com.
Oh man, yeah. So
is that a thing?
There's a website for it. Lol.
Okay, someone check me then. I really want to know.
And then for Destiny 1, I have 500 hours.
For Destiny 2, I have about 205, but that's not recording me playing offline. Mostly. My Titan has most of the hours because at least in my experience as a main, like my main used to be a Warlock main. No, it used to be a Titan main, and I kind of got bored of Titan. Then I switched to Warlock main through the rest of Destiny 1, then switched back to, went to Warlock, hated the Warlock experience in D2 vanilla, then went back to Titan and haven't visited Warlock. Warlock has shitty jumps. That's just the main point.
No, people are just shitty platformers.
So
I was a Nova Bomb runner, and I was a good Void Block, and like I was really good. And they changed the way Nova Bomb worked, where it's just this giant glob of shit. I'm just like, instead of something like super fast, like it just kind of like, I like, damn it. And then they added like all the 3 classes, and they only had like different stuff. I was just like, so I just went back to Titan, and now Titans have roaming supers, so it's just whatever.
So on the topic of like
Spencer,
past of like things you've done in the past, let's talk about the Activision content map. Let's start with that.
God damn. Okay, when Destiny came out, it was supposed to be a 10-year deal with Activision. Activision, being the very, very big company that likes piecemeal almost everything they release, took a lot of major things out of Destiny. Aside from the whole like changing and retconning, but what they did is in the original Destiny, they had Destiny, and then they had the expansion, like a tiny expansion, but it wasn't really like paid for the first raid, and that came out on the 26th. And then the Vault of Glass, and then there was the Heroic one. Then we had like a giant gap of content where there was nothing to do, and then they released the 2 season pass thing. It wasn't even a season pass, it was just like, here's 2 expansions. First one was the Dark Below, which lore-wise was fucking cool.
Lore-wise, yes.
Everything else, it was a giant strike and a waste of $10.
Oh,
Keep in mind that these 2, I think it was like $30 or $20 for the House of Wolves and this.
Yes,
and it was just like,
30.
Jesus Christ, it was so small for the amount of content. And the reason why is Activision kept wanting to like spread it out rather than having like Destiny as like continuous stuff. And this is what they call games as a service and live service. So like it's a game that's constantly updated, and that's the common trend right now. And for that was a giant smack in the face. Well, yeah, the raid was a fucking, as I said, it was a giant ass fucking strike. It was a strike.
Yep.
It was, people could solo the damn thing because it was so goddamn easy.
People solo the raid? God.
You can solo it, you can do it in less than 10 minutes.
I soloed it as a Warlock.
Yep.
To get fucking, because I was so bored, I was like, fuck, I'm just gonna do it.
It was the world's first raid lair before raid lairs were even.
So, that's Destiny 1, at least year 1. That was atrocious. Then they started listening, although the Activision's still pulling the strings with the whole Eververse bullshit. So we were on the Taken King, and that was a giant, like, breath of sigh, where it's just like, great content, great lore, Book of Sorrows, the origin of the Hive, just this big, meaty content, really good raid.
Best, like, patrol zone ever in the game, Dreadnought.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the Dreadnought. God, that was so fun. And then, like, they introduced, like, the same thing what you currently have in D2, where it was the Court of Oryx, which was this just randomly encounter. You put like an item down, and it would spawn a horde of enemies, and there would be different challenges every week. It just provided variety.
Yeah,
and a game that didn't really have fucking variety.
Mode, yeah. It was the first kind of like horde type thing, where you would go through a series of waves of ads, followed up by like a big boss, in order to get good gear. So,
yeah, it was a giant like influx of just good. I mean, they focused more on story. They had amazing soundtrack for Oryx.
True, but
it was just a giant. Well, the Rise of Iron was okay.
No. I'm not talking about Rise of Iron. I am not shitting on Rise of Iron at all. I'm saying between when Taken King first came out, and then that entire span of time until Rise of Iron. I'm talking about.
I mean, like the summer update for Destiny.
I'm talking about the drought that basically was from winter until summer, where they had one spring free content update and nothing else.
Oh yeah, back in like 2016, where it's like at the April 12 like spring update.
Yeah. Where they just took one of the expansions from the year before, House of Wolves, where it had like a PvE arena thing, and
I remember that. Yeah. That's how significant it is to me.
They updated it, so they would have Taken enemies, because Taken King, had this new, people can argue new race of enemies called Taken, and threw them into this older type of content, which is good, because frankly, this company, it is definitely easier to take older content and make it relevant again. for players. So that's certainly what they did, and it did bring a lot of people back and gave them stuff to do that was meaningful. But content that came out in September, all the way up until I think this was March or April, there was nothing new to do in the game except for the raid's heroic mode and challenge. Like, I stopped playing Destiny 1 after I finished doing all the challenges for the raid because I had everything. So I was just like, I'm done, and I didn't play again.
Rise of Iron was September 20th.
Right. But then that also didn't have anything much to do until the Moment of Triumph in the following summer.
Yeah, where you had to play a giant amount of catch-up, where you couldn't find anyone to play fucking... Because of that giant gap, no one on my original raid team wanted to play anymore. I'm like, can somebody help me? And I had a fucking LFG, just to get that final challenge. And I think it was like a day before for year 2's shirt. Yep. Oh my god, that was a mad rush. I was like,
a big thing to know about Destiny is basically... After the first year where they had the 2 expansions after the main vanilla release, they decided to go into this, strategy of just having large fall annual releases that would basically, outside of like a few minor events like Sparrow Racing League or holiday type things, didn't really have much other content for the rest of the year, and that went for the next 2 years. And then came Destiny 2, where there were certain decisions that were made mostly on Activision's part in terms of they wanted to focus more on casual players for it, and that created a problem where after the first month there was nothing for people to do.
They alienated their entire...
You're talking about Destiny 2 right now, so Activision's effect on Destiny 2 right now. Okay.
Yes.
So it's a 10-year plan. So it's a publishing deal and funding deal for Destiny as an IP.
Yeah, so it's their 4th year as a whole, and they made a lot of changes to the game. Some nice quality of life changes, but for the most part, to the original player base, very negative.
Fucking shaders.
Yes, there's all kinds of things with the way economy was done that really just ticks people off. A lot of steps that seem like they were going backwards. Where Destiny in its like several years, by the time like the first game was done, had a lot of great things going for it in terms of content, in terms of things you can do, and even certain quality of life aspects. And a lot of people felt that outside of like graphical upgrades and new changes in terms of like feeling, the game was just downgraded. People felt slower and weaker with their characters. There's less upgradability you can do with all your stuff. And then also the Eververse store was pushed on people significantly harder than it was previously, so almost nothing positive. Then Destiny 2 showed that it would have
Go Fast update, the Masterwork update.
Right. So they had certain updates, but they also had 2 expansions. So they merged the first year of Destiny 1, which a lot of people thought was comical, but the content that they actually did definitely was a bit, I won't say cash grabby, but clickbaity. Yeah, that's a better word for it. Was
it was repeating the same history, though. It was literally the repeat of Destiny 1.
It was, yes.
It was a repeat of we said we've learned our lessons. We know what we're doing. This is gonna be a lot, and all it did was it was Destiny 1 with a new coat of paint and pretty much the same content policy beforehand. And it was just it's frustrating because as a Destiny 1 veteran, and if we're gonna, I'm a giant lore nut as well. So Osiris, and they said here's a new expansion. Osiris, and I was super fucking happy because I was like, I really want to learn more about Apex and Osiris. Because Osiris is if we're gonna make this TLDR, Osiris is a guardian who basically fought on the 6 fronts. The 6 fronts is where the Fallen basically attacked us, completely random, kind of how the Red Legion attacked us. And the only guardians that were like holding the wall in the 6 fronts was Shaxx, Zavala, Saint 14, and Osiris. Osiris
Cade was there too.
Cade was there
Cade too. Cade was there too. I just forgot Cade.
Well, I mean,
But,
a
like-
bunch of them are, but the big
that's
names.
5, I think, right? That's 5. Is that 5 or 6?
It's called the Battle of Six Fronts because they were being attacked in 6 different directions by the Fallen.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
So he is a hero of the Six Fronts. He's a giant. He's one of the biggest warlock. Anna Bray was
She was there. That's how she was.
Hunter.
That's how she beat. That's how she says because she was a part of it, but then she appeared right after.
Anna Bray of the Clovis Bray Foundation, which was the major scientific foundation on Mars that did questionable stuff and also very good stuff. But that's entirely a different one. And my point is that Osiris is one of the best warlocks, next to Torin the Shattered, who went completely mad. But like he studied the hive, and he wanted to get really obsessed with that. The Vex are these giant, it's just completely interesting, like cybernetic beings that can control reality and want to exist in reality itself.
And time travel.
And they have the ability to adjust time and reality to what they see fit to a certain aspect. They run simulations,
space, etc. They basically think they make reality a simulation at this point.
Yeah, they only believe what they call the pattern. The pattern. Everything needs to lead up to the pattern, this one certain thing. So Osiris was very big on trying to figure out how to stop the Vex by, if you can't beat their enemy, join them. But he didn't, like, he basically took Vex Tech and just kit bashed it into everything he could find. I mean, that's the whole big point of what Curse of Osiris is. It's to the point where he even got like a giant religion based around him, where you have this weird and comical fanatic, and it's just this big giant, like.
What's your opinion actually on what they did with Brother Vance?
I think it's funny. I think it's pretty funny.
I thought it was too, but I felt the mix of both. So again, another quick thing for people. So in Destiny 1, one of the few interactions we had with the concept of Osiris was essentially with his cult. Where there was a high level rank PvP mode, rank, but high level ranks.
It's pretty much like Overwatch comp.
Yeah,
Overwatch comp.
So there's a competitive PvP mode known as Trials of Osiris, which was this high intensity 3v3
elimination.
Experience thing. And then if you got a perfect score of 7 wins in a row, you got to go to the lighthouse on Mercury, the epicenter of this cult of Osiris's operations, and get really good and exclusive loot. So for most people, that's like people who really knew lore. That was basically their only interactions with Osiris. And Brother Vance was the NPC who was the vendor for this. So Dion, who's just this like mysterious guy that would say all these things about Osiris and what he's doing and his greatness, and how we're watching you and we expect great things from you. And then in Destiny 2, the first expansion they had was Curse of Osiris, which took Mercury, which is this planet that was completely taken over by the Vex. The entire planet is basically a giant simulation. It's this giant simulation machine that they use to create something called the Infinite Forest, which we can get into. But when they reintroduced Brother Vance in this expansion, they show him to be, rather than this like mysterious head of a cult centered around Osiris, basically the president of the Osiris fan club. Like this man is obsessed with Osiris to the point of, again, what you would expect like a creepy head of a celebrity's fan club to be, essentially. Like, he's never even actually met Osiris. That's how both comical and also sad it is. So some people felt, they took like this interesting, mysterious character and just made him into like just the most comical and also
he's basically the biggest fan from Oblivion.
Yeah.
But I like that because it's so funny because
no one's denying it's funny. It's just disappointing that they had to just turn him into that guy.
No, because the thing is, like, back in the lore, because Osiris didn't want this. He was like, why are people worshiping me? So that's why it fits in, because it's just like, why are people worshiping me? I don't need people to say. But at a certain point, he's just like, I'm just going to use this to my advantage. Like, I don't really care for this. And so he's just like, there's a line actually, because I'm doing majority of the content drops because a lot of it's like weekly stuff and it requires you to do progressive. So I'm trying to get all the trying to get World Zero, which is the exotic you get for completing all the weapon challenges. And there's one point where he just says, it's like, yeah, I've been trying to contact Sagira, which is Osiris's ghost, but she won't return my calls.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
It's very sad. Like sometimes, but other times it's hilarious because you'll like ask like, can you put in a good word to Osiris for me, or like when you're going through the campaign in it. He's like, oh boy, I'll finally get to meet Osiris, and it's funny like how giddy he gets, and when you complete certain things, control zone, he'd be like, your greatness is so incredible. You would tell me if you were actually Osiris, right? It's just all kinds of things of comical.
Fanboyism, right?
I think more the issue was people thought that it reflected the lack of seriousness that the content itself was being given.
Yeah.
In that it is still to this day considered to be the worst expansion. At least by a majority.
Crota's End.
Yeah. The biggest argument is Crota's End or is Curse of Osiris considered the worst. And the only reason I consider Curse of Osiris to be the worst expansion in all of Destiny is simply because of both the expectation and the potential that this expansion had, and the overall failure of it. Like, it had some nice lore stuff, but there were a lot of things that they would like dangle at you, and just there'd be nothing for
Yeah, it's just a major disappointment because Osiris is this big giant warlock who's been banned from the city for banned by the speaker, who's basically this figurehead on this semi-religion based on the government.
He's basically the guardian pope.
Yeah,
Damn, okay.
He's a guardian pope. And he's banned by him because of the difference. Because the speaker later on dies, it was speculated to people that Osiris was going to be the speaker, but he doesn't want to speak for the city. He wants to continue fighting the Vex. But it's just like the way they handled it was so bad. Like,
so bad.
I'm Osiris. I have the ability that some abilities the Vex have. I'm trapped in the forest. I need your help. Thanks for your help. Bye. That was it.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, that's pretty exactly like. Skillup's video on the Curse of DLC.
On the what? Please repeat. You're cutting out. Just repeat that.
Have you guys heard of SkillUp?
Yeah.
Okay, so he did a video on Curse of Osiris, and it was exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
It was just yeet and yo, left and go.
Right. So definitely in terms of Rob Bluebong, basically. Like I said, Osiris is this incredible figure that anyone who is into lore or is into like the concept of warlocks being like these incredible scholars in the world. Osiris, like I said, next to like people like Toland, is considered the greatest and the biggest legend. And they have your interactions with him are limited to basically like these time copies of him. Yeah, time copies of him inside of the Infinite Force, which is this giant simulation machine that he's stuck in. And reflections. One time you talk to him actually, or rather your ghost talks to him in a cutscene, and then the rest of the time your interactions with him are simply through comp. And people already before were getting tired of the idea of bringing out these new NPCs and or old legends and having it be nothing more than voices in your head. That's not fun. That's not enjoyable. That's not what people wanted from the game. Like, yes, you can get some more from stuff, but they like people generally like the idea of interacting with these heroes of legend from the game. Another example of people feeling certain legends being mistreated in the game is Saint 14. So Saint 14 is this another huge legend in the game. He was this Titan, one of the strongest and also like highest,
Noblest.
He's
the most noblest.
He was incredibly noble. He was the guardian who was closest with the speaker. I think due to just their shared ideals.
Really.
Yeah. And despite that, despite the relationship between the speaker and Osiris, Saint 14 didn't have a strong relationship with Osiris. Both of them, while disagreeing with each other on things, did respect each other greatly. That's why in the lore, Saint 14 is sent by the speaker to go and basically go over to Osiris Mercury and talk to him. The speaker wanted him to keep eyes on him, but Saint 14 mainly wanted to convince Osiris to come back to help humanity. And then he disappeared. We later learned that basically he also got trapped in the Infinite Forest, and the general idea of it is he died fighting the Vex, and there is...
For ages.
Yeah, for literally ages. It literally took...
For ages.
It took
thousands of years.
Yeah.
Centuries, like centuries.
And he no longer had a weapon. He literally no longer had a weapon and was straight up just with his bare fists was killing the Vex.
That's how cool Saint 14 was. He's a void titan, so he had the ability to use the sentinel shield and like create bubbles and just like he was so badass to the point where the Vex Vex were basically trying to figure out his wavelength for his light, because the one thing the Vex can't figure out is how light works and how guardians work. Mm-hmm. That's the one antithesis to them. So they figured out they can't simulate light. So they finally spent centuries trying to get a wavelength of the same level of what his light is, and they finally got it snuffed out. But what they didn't do is they didn't desecrate his body. They created a grave for him, like a monument. Yeah. And they left him alone inside the Infinite Forest because they respected him that he lasted that long against the Vex. Because
the Vex that are literally this unfeeling hive mind that just don't care for anything else and just care about don't care about anything. Well, it's where they kind of are organic with like the Vex and stuff, but that's not really important. But the fact that these essentially machines, the best way to kind of describe how they feel, actually found respect for this being. So I thought that was great, but still, people were anticipating they would meet Saint 14 again, or at least given some explanation to what happened to him, because people were able to data mine that you would at some point get his shotgun, the paradox. And so people were excited, and there was this little quest thing that would lead with you, fighting him, and it's literally just a shrine / burial site for him, and that's it. And it was very disappointing for a lot of people, because one, the fact that just this great hero is dead is already disappointing, but also in the Infinite Forest, you can simulate anything, and because time doesn't really work, time is a weird thing there, it's totally possible for you to encounter a past reflection of Saint 14 in it. So in general, it seemed like they just went the very, easy route. It's like, we could do this. Yeah, exactly. Like, we could introduce this cool person, we could have him, let's say, you fight with alongside Saint 14 and save him from it, as like, an added thing to you helping Osiris. Or maybe Osiris says, I was stuck in the Infinite Forest for so long, I couldn't help out my old friend, Saint 14, so now I need your help again to get him out. And it's like, nope, literally Osiris never says a single thing about Saint 14 ever again. And almost like he doesn't acknowledge that he died trying to rescue him. So like it's a lot of disappointing things. The whole thing was disappointing. There was like almost no content. It was the smallest patrol space in the game. You can't even summon a sparrow. Which is the hoverback. Yeah, which is the hoverback used to go around. It's
all the content is in the Infinite Forest too,
which no one ever goes to because you can only access it through strikes or missions. So they don't join
or also adventures. Like you have to. Yeah.
But honestly, there's just no point to going back there. It's just they messed up the game so much.
Yeah, and then like the way you get weapons through the weapon crafting system, I was talking about this earlier, is that like you have to basically do strikes and you have to do crucible matches, and they cost back then. Legendary shards were impossible to get.
Yeah.
And like you had to use legendary shards, and they had to get 10 of certain mats, and then they get upgraded, and then you can only use on one thing, and they have to fall certain weapon cubes, and it's just like I'm still having an issue right now.
And there's time gated, so you couldn't do all of them.
Yeah, that's you could only do 3. You could only do 3 a week.
Yeah, there's a lot of just disappointing things that like they give you content, but is limited. It was not too much. The only good thing that came out of that whole thing was it had some really great exotics.
Like Vigilance Wing, I think.
Vigilance Wing's back.
No. Vigilance Wing was from vanilla.
Okay. Well, I mean, it was good. It was good in the beginning. It was just there's something.
No, I'm talking about like Osiris. When it came out, they actually did a really big buff on it too. They did also a really cool thing for like ornaments. They actually made like a really cool ornament where it's like based on the Book of the Dead. But moving on to the next one, which was Warmind, which is more of a disappointment.
Like lore-wise?
Lore-wise, you kill. Yeah. I mean, okay, I get it. You kill Zol. You kill Zol. It's cool. You kill a hive god. You kill the weakest of the worm gods. I get it.
Yeah. But it's just so quick thing then for Warmind as a whole to get spark guns on it. Yeah. So Mars was one of the original worlds you could go to in Destiny 1, and you come back to in Destiny 2 to help a guardian that was missing up until this expansion. On a break to infiltrate the Clovis Bray Research Center on Mars, which is this giant place in Mars, in order to get rid of a hive threat there, as well as try to enlist the help of a Warmind known as Rasputin. Warminds are basically like these giant was one of these giant AIs that basically was created by humanity long ago in order to protect it. It's like, if you...
The Warminds were created basically for protection where Guardians couldn't do it. They were created before Guardians came, which was during the collapse, which was basically the decimation of the human race by the darkness, which follows the Traveler, who provided a giant technological revolution. And what part of that technical revolution was actually from the Clovis Bray. That was one of the heads. Clovis Bray made all these technological advancements. They made from exos the ability to transfer your consciousness, the AI Warminds, which are basically a giant defense system for the world, because by the time the Traveler came out, we had the ability to do space travel and far space travel within Sol, which is our solar system.
Right, so a lot of really great potentials there for lore. And the big baddie of this expansion was a being known as Sol, which is basically the hive gain their power through worm gods. And Sol is one of the, or I should say he was one of the existing worm gods, but he was the weakest of all of them. And so focus on Zol and the hive that he enlisted, known as Nokris, which was another lore point that people were super excited about, because the baddie from Destiny 1 from Taken King was Oryx, the king of all the hive, who came to the solar system because you killed his son Crota in previous expansion, Dark Below. And Oryx had several children, but officially only one son, who was Crota. Did have another son, but he removed all records of his other son, except for one single statue in the Dreadnought.
His son was Nocris.
Yes.
Yep. Nocris, who was I can actually handle this because I did a little more research on it, because this will actually tie into Shadowfall a little bit when we get into that like a little bit later. Nocris. Shadowkeep, Shadowfall. Yeah. But yeah. Nocris was basically the brother of Crota that was exiled and removed because he went against the idea of sword logic. Now, the idea of sword logic, it's very complicated. I tried to explain it to B-Chan a little bit, and I kind of got lost because it's just like it's a weird thought process. But think of like the Hive, like multi-level marketing. Basically, you have the guy on the top getting all the food. That's the best way I can put it. I mean, this is how I give all the evil factions. The Vex are basically Cybermen. The Hive are like giant multi-level marketing and a giant pyramid scheme, because that's the way their tithe system works. The Cabal are just giant Romans that are really fat.
Roman
turtle spaceman people that look like that have giant vagina mouths.
Damn.
What? Okay. Well, you want to go that?
Attitude for our chief.
And the women are twice as large with giant tusks.
Yeah.
Let's leave it at that. They're space rhinos.
They're space rhinos with weird faces, and they breathe methane.
And turtle bodies. On all these things, they're the weirdest, which is kind of funny. And then
so the Hive follow this idea of what they call the sword logic, which is the
sword logic. I know what that is now. Continue.
I was getting late for it because I had trouble explaining it. I'm going to have trouble explaining it now, but I mean, we have two other people in the room and maybe one other person to explain it a little better. Is the idea of how the Hive function is that when the Hive, which originally the Osmium Court, met the Worm Gods and they wanted more power because on the Fundament, which is this giant gaseous planet with 52 races, they were being constantly barraged by another race. Don't remember. But so they have sort of a tithe system, so like we'll give you more power and we'll give you our children in order for you to gain power and grow strength, but what you need to do is follow the same religion / logic, and that's kind of like the Hive follow this kind of idealism, is that where if I am weaker and you are stronger and I conquer you and I defeat you, I take your place in the ability of quote unquote being stronger, and therefore I grow stronger for being people that are lower than me, and then what it is by like decimation of another life form that is not your own, you gain strength. So and then upon doing that, the way the Hive work is that they do that, and then they feed their worm, because it's a symbiotic relationship. If you don't do that, the worm will consume the host. Mm-hmm. So Nocris took the same sword logic and Hive sword logic idealism and took it a little further, because what the Hive believe in is when you die a true death, like a true death, because they have the ability to be beyond actual reality and have their own if you're strong enough, you'll have your own pocket dimension, which is basically called like an ascendant realm or throne world, where it saves your soul. Basically, your soul is there. You control when you're in your throne world. You you choose reality as you see fit, because it is your own dimension.
So it's like having a Horcrux, but your Horcrux is literally an entire different plane of existence.
Basically, like that's a good example. Another good example was that in Forsaken, when Cade was killed, there was one I forget what's the faction called.
I forgot his name.
There was one Scorn that basically followed the sword logic and then finally got enough tithe and power to have his own throne world. And when you go off, because in Forsaken you basically kill all the assassins that killed Cade, and he's one of them. When you go to his throne world and kill him in his own ascendant realm, he's giant.
Cade is?
Mindbender.
No. The Mindbender is
Oh.
absolutely giant because of the sword logic, because he follows the sword logic, and Cade is such a big force in the world of Destiny that he was assisted in killing Cade with the rest of the Forsaken Barons. So that's kind of how it works. So Nokris kind of subverted that instead of with Zol, believe in the idea of death. Just death itself. Like, death is eternal, and death is permanent, and death is powerful, rather than your true death is what brings you power. So that's why he was exiled.
Right, because he was a necromancer, which goes against the logic. Yeah, it goes. It's the exact opposite. They believe, if you die, deserve to remain dead in order to help fuel the sword logic.
Yeah, because if you die, that means you are weak and you deserve to be dead. Only the strong should survive, and that's what this the Hive's ideal version of sword logic it is, and that's what the sword logic is. What we used to kill Crota. We killed Crota with his own sword.
Right.
So therefore, we became that. We killed Oryx using their logic and their methodologies to kill them and become Ascendant Hive. By taking on Crota's soul and then being allowed on the Dreadnought and then killing Oryx on his own plane and on their own playing field.
Right. So basically, Nokris was very interesting as a enemy to a lot of people, as well as Zol, because again, the Warp Gods are never really fully explained too much outside of the interactions with them, with Oryx and his siblings, in Book of Sorrows, and just like brief descriptions of each of them. So Zol, despite being the weakest and the smallest of all of them, was still a very interesting enemy. And he's reduced to basically being this giant literal worm that can shoot out like laser beams out of his mouth. That is a strike boss. And so is Nokris. They had 2 strikes in it. One was to defeat Nokris, and the other one was to defeat Zol. And it's funny because like the strike for Nokris is actually like as a whole probably one of the better strikes.
It was pretty cool. Like
the concept with it was definitely very interesting, especially with like Nokris, who basically could like summon dead Hive right from the ground to attack you, and you can just do it constantly. Like, it was very interesting. But it was a letdown, and then there's no real lore.
There was some lore with whole Nokris kind of making like an agreement with Zol, and the fact that, and this is what I was reading on for Shadowkeep, is that Zol basically wanted you to kill him because there's actually a secret quest in a patrol zone when a public event happens, which public events are basically timed events that give you loot, and if you fulfill certain requirements, it goes to heroic mode and you get more things. So in Io, which is one of the planets that was infected by the Taken, which was a garden world, like a second Earth basically for the rest of humanity, there's a certain point public event which involves Taken, and if you do that and you find a certain enemy and you kill him, you can get a chance to run a certain hidden event, which lets you run in this kind of Vex controlled area with a little bit of Taken, and it was a really cool like kind of time thing, and they did this before, and it's for a weapon.
Oh, the Whisper, right? Yeah, it's so OP. They nerfed it so hard.
They did. Right.
They nerfed
this actually goes back also to Oryx, because Oryx had a similar thing that he did.
Yeah, it's the same ideology. Like, you beat me, so now you can use me, and I can gain tithe at the time. That's the scout rifle that you get for doing the exotic quest. And
touch of mouse. Touch of mouse.
Touch of mouse. Touch of mouse. So the same kind of concept is that still follows the sword logic. You're following the sword logic. Guardians follow the sword logic. And so you kill Zol, and then you find the secret quest, and you actually get a sniper rifle that is built from Zol's soul. And the idea is that with Zol, you can shoot people and kill people, and you're still feeding him. So he wanted you to do that because then you could still build tithe. And Nokris wanted you to kill them because it was a big giant plan. Because Nokris is a necromancer, he could probably be coming back. And then we're going into theory crafting right now. I mean,
we're jumping way far.
The whole point is with Hive, just like with superheroes, just because they die doesn't mean they stay dead.
Yeah, because Omnigul fucking came back like 8 times.
Unless you
Yeah,
kill,
Omnigul was
unless you kill them in the Ascended
wizard for
world, right?
Crota.
Unless you kill them in the Ascended
It's-
world, they don't die.
Yeah, if you kill them in the third world, they die truly. But that doesn't mean that there aren't ways to bring them back. Like Oryx was able to bring back one of his siblings.
Sisters.
Yeah, one of his sisters. She grew a
Actually,
wrath.
both of them. No,
Zero
they
Wrath,
brought.
yeah.
Okay, so no. Basically, what ended up happening was when the Hive was still trying to be a dominant race in the universe, Oryx and his sisters decided to basically sacrifice both. Well, basically, the sisters decided to sacrifice themselves to Oryx so he would gain more power, so he can converse with the worms. And in doing so, he found the power to take after he killed the strongest worm god. Akka. And then in that process, he waged a war with the Ecumine, which is this alien race that we actually never see in game. It's all basically in text lore. And during that war, he basically managed to resurrect both his sisters, since each of his sisters basically had a what do you call it? Like a title, a moniker, a kind of
It was an ideal. It was like an ideal.
Yeah,
Like, define them.
Yeah, so one sister was truly dedicated to war, right? So her entire symbolism was basically death and destruction. So he massacred an entire Ecumine military division, and in doing so, he resurrected his sister back from the dead. And as for his other sister, whose entire symbolism was based on trickery, he actually made a deal with Ecumine where he would basically pretend to conspire with the Ecumine to kill his sister again, only to trick them and kill the entire Ecumine military division again, which basically brought back his other sister.
God
and
damn.
so there
Keep
is
in
a way
mind
for
for
you
those
to,
listening
God damn.
that this is what they have to follow in order to keep their worms satisfied. They have
to constantly kill. They have to constantly feed the worm.
So they have idealisms. All 3 of the sisters: Savathun, Oryx, and Zivu-Arath.
Yep.
Well, all of them.
Also, let's make a
have
clarification. Oryx is technically a male, but he was originally a female.
They're all sisters.
It's strange. I know.
It's magic.
When they
magic.
when they accepted the worm gods, they didn't have a stated gender. When they had the osmiums, they did have a stated gender, but when they took on the symbiotic relationship with the worm, it became ambiguous or non-gender or I think non-binary is the word for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
They became non-binary, but they still went with the moniker of she, her, etc.
She, him, yeah.
Okay.
But they are technically sisters. But they all follow the same idealism, following on top of the sword logic. But the worms were their rules are basically set by whatever things that they were told to do. So Oryx has to basically travel and go see the world because he's the wanderer, he's the cartographer, he was the person following the ship.
He's the curious
he's the curious one basically. So Zivu-Arath wanted to be the mother and wanted to have a bunch of children.
No, that's the other one.
That's Zivu? Really?
That was Savathun. Yeah, she's the mother. The covenant.
Well, no, I was saying Savathun. Savathun wanted to be the mother. Zivu-Arath wanted to be the warrior and conquer and wanted to battle. Yes. So just the implications of how Warmind handled it. It was taking things about worm gods, which have been teasing for ages and ages, and then they also brought up Rasputin with this giant Warmind who's been a sticking point for a lot of people, where he's just this big spooky Warmind and we have no idea who he is. And there was this one giant theory that I kind of latched on where during when the darkness invaded, which is basically the antithesis of humanity, the traveler tried to run away and the Rasputin shot him down or crippled it so it didn't move, and then they made fun of it in Warmind, which was fucking
that's theory crafting. We're gonna jump into that a little bit later. So
but it was previous theory crafting.
Oh, okay.
Where it's previous theory crafting. It was things that was in before and they made fun of it, but they were bringing up this whole thing with fucking Rasputin and the biggest Warmind that we connected all the Warminds together needs our help and he needs our credit card information and their numbers on the back of the card.
There was a lot of strange things.
A lot of weird choices. There was a lot of retconning too.
Yeah, there was a lot of retconning with Warmind. There was some retconning with the Curse of Silence too, but a lot with whatnot. So again, people who are diehard lore heads didn't like the idea of all things being changed in order to fit new prerogatives.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they weren't really too big, and most of it made sense. So I didn't think it was too bad. Since we're talking about the hive leaders, it's a good segue into Forsaken. So that was the big year 2 fall expansion that was meant to bring in a whole lot of people. They made a ton of gameplay changes that were pretty much all positive. This was a big story with a lot of content. The biggest raid ever in the game. They had 2 new patrol zone locations. One that was basically designed just for the campaign, and then another one that you would unlock after the campaign that was completely dedicated to endgame content, which was a first that also changed dynamically.
They brought up really good because I mean, post vanilla Destiny, they brought up really good cinematics, but then after like TOO and Warmind, it was like okay, but like this brought it up a notch, like. Them having the balls to kill like Cade Cade, a really big fan favorite.
Nathan
Fillion. You killed Nathan Fillion. You killed smart.
Nathan Fillion didn't even voice him for that expansion. That's what. Yeah. It was actually who is the voice for the ghost again?
Just the what, sorry?
Is it Nolan North?
Yeah, it's Nolan North.
Yeah, I believe they had.
They had Nolan North. That was a pretty good impression. Damn.
It was either Nolan North or Troy Baker.
Oh yeah, Troy Baker for it. Shit.
Well, it was. I believe it was Nolan North, but yeah, it wasn't even Nathan Fillion. It wasn't because they didn't want him to do it. They couldn't have him do it. For like money reasons, or he didn't want to do it. It was strictly just timing, because Nathan Fillion had his TV show, The Rookie, start filming, so he just had literally no time frame to come in and record for it. Which again, he was a reason it's like. Shitty thing with scheduling, but he felt Cade was done very well for it. It was a good send off for him, and he said that he'll never get to do him again. So but no hard feelings at all. So yeah, like I said, it was a good impression to the point where some people didn't even notice.
Just for people who don't know, Cade 6 is a we said it was a fan favorite, but the reason why he's a fan favorite is because it was Nathan Fillion, so it was a smart ass Nathan Fillion. He was the Hunter Vanguard. So the city has basically a Vanguard, and they all train new Guardians, and there's different sections. There's Warlock, Titan, and Hunter. And he was just a smart-ass guy in the room. There was a point in, where they were talking about Oryx and Eris Morn, who's one of the survivors, or the first people who go down to the moon, try to kill Crota. He's basically, talking, and Eris just keeps putting this hive-like rock on the desk. And he's like, please don't touch my maps. Don't touch my maps. And he just keeps moving the rock.
Yeah. Get your rock off my map.
Get your rock on my map.
Get your rock off my map.
And then we're in the middle of the conversation, he walks out, and they're just like, Cade, we're in the middle of me. I know, I'm done with it.
And then, they're having a meeting in the farm when the entire city is decimated by the Red Legion. And he's holding a chicken. He's petting a chicken.
It's like a chicken. It's the Colonel, man.
Yep.
The Colonel.
Yeah.
So he's just this it's like a part of comic relief, and just killing basically comic relief. It sets you on, which is cool. It sets you on this giant western, because that's what their inspiration for Forsaken was westerns.
A revenge western story. Yeah.
A revenge western. So you were going to a western revenge story to kill all Cade's killers, who were basically corrupted, fallen, that were basically corrupted by Riven.
Well, I wouldn't say they directly corrupted.
They were corrupted. It was Riven's wish magic corrupted Ether and brought back Fikrul due to Varrix's wish, or someone's wish. No, actually, no, it was Aldrin.
It was Aldrin.
It was Aldrin's wish.
It was Aldrin.
It was Aldrin's wish. He felt sorry for a dying captain, and then so Riven who I'll get into in a second, basically revived him with ether, because that's what the Fallen are basically previous races who worship the Traveler, and the Traveler left him as it normally does. And so they use ether to breathe and grow fat and grow stronger, and so it was corrupted, so it would revive him. So they're basically like fallen zombie.
Yeah,
If you want to take
it's the best way to summarize it. But Forza Horizon was a huge content drop in terms of lore, because one, they talked a lot about this new race, the Scorn. They said are basically like these crazy,
like a splinter
a splinter group of these zombie-like corrupted Fallen, who, by the way, have the most aggressive AI in the entire game.
Oh.
I fucking hate them so much.
They're sometimes very fun to play against when you want that challenge, but sometimes they're incredibly aggravating, because you get
like the fire ones, if you have a spawn of them.
You can't just hide. Yeah, you can't just hide behind cover shooting at them. You have to constantly move around. They have so many enemies that are designed specifically
like really good CC.
Yeah, no, they're very well done. So you had a lot of lore about them and their creation. You had a lot of lore about their original de facto leader, Aldrin, who, like, the actual leader, the fanatic, looked at as a father.
As a father, because he brought him back to life.
Well, he believes he's the reason he was brought back to life.
Yeah.
So Aldrin is the brother of the Queen of the Woken, which is one of the playable races in Destiny. They're basically these beings that both are beings of light and dark, that have like this very rich history. They're kind of like the elves of Destiny. Even like their main area in the game that you end up going to later, the Drink City, has a very fantasy vibe to it. So the whole point of the game is basically Aldrin frees the Scorn from prison that the Awoken created, called the Prison of Elders.
If I may interject on this a little bit.
Go.
So if we're going to TLDR, at least the Woken are basically people who didn't agree with the Guardians at the time, because Guardians were basically warlords. So they flew off into a different place, and a singularity happened.
It was before Guardians were a thing. It was right before. It was right before the darkness attacked the Traveler. They actually came into contact with the darkness, and we're trying, while on a giant ship, and tried communicating to the darkness directly, stating they're not with.
We're not with humanity. We're not with the Traveler. We don't like the Traveler's followings.
And then the singularity occurred.
They let us go.
Yeah, and
the singularity occurred.
That basically had them come to contact simultaneously with both light and darkness, and then they're transported to another dimension, that basically was like a giant paradise.
So they appointed a queen, and this queen basically has been forcing it. I'm trying not to be too lore dumb, because we're getting up to Shadowkeep, but it's kind of necessary at the same time.
I feel like we're just jumping all over the place at this point.
Yeah,
it's getting too much.
Yeah, it's getting a little bit too much. So let's kind of like pare this down a bit. So the Woken Queen basically controls majority of the things. There's a big giant battle with the Fallen. She becomes the Kel, the Fallen, and with all of her power, she has the Ascendant Realm and whatnot. And so with that, she tries to prevent Orcs because she has foresight, and she dies. So because of that, Uldren thinks she's dead, but she's not really dead. She's just hiding in Warwick's throne world, and it's this just big giant thing, like, where the queen has foresight because of the singularity, and the Woken people have some form of that. And so out of grief, Uldren, being stuck in the Prison of Elders, being treated like shit, basically tries to usurp the entire thing, breaking the Prison of Elders, which is this big giant prison where all the bad people go. Mm-hmm. Like Skolas, which was the leader of the largest Fallen faction, and if the wolves came together, it would probably decimate humanity. And we're getting up to a point where, when the Dreaming City was created, it's a pocket world. It's like an Ascendant Realm for the Queen. She took back an Ahamkara. Ahamkara are basically wish dragons, but have more of a monkey's paw effect, and they feed off reality. Where if I think I should eat this taco, and I don't want to eat the taco, but I want to have the will to eat the taco, it'll grant me the ability and thought process to eat said taco.
Wait.
That's the best way I can put it.
So
like
you can't eat the taco.
Yeah.
But you
They
want.
use hypnotism and basically manipulation of thought.
They're manipulative dragons that have wish magic.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so at a certain point, the city was using them, and it got too much out of hand because people would wish really stupid wishes, and they would backfire and hurt a ton of people. So they decided that they would call what they call the Great Hunt. The Great Hunt is basically to decimate the entire Ahamkara race. And there was one Ahamkara left that the Awoken took away, which is Riven. And Riven, in a symbiotic relationship, would work with the Queen. But while Oryx was attacking, in the background, Savathun snuck around out of her, because at a certain time when Oryx came to Seoul, Savathun went into a black hole to figure out how to defeat her worm, so she didn't have to do the same thing that Oryx did, which is basically kill the worm. So that means you killed your boss. Now you are the boss in the multi-level marketing scheme. So basically, they feed off tithes. So she was trying to figure out how to defeat her worm, and in the black hole, because black hole time works differently. She tried to trick her worm, and she experimented on Thrall, which are the lower half of the pyramid.
Right. She created a murder battery by manipulating the flow of time to trick her worm.
Because she was gifted a Vex mind, because she tricked. We're skipping over, but we're gonna get to the Shadowkeep because I'm really excited.
Yeah. I know it has to do with Shadowkeep.
Yeah. So because this is kind of a precursor for Savathun being a raid boss and a boss, or some sort of force for Destiny 3 or the further on expansions, so that Savathun, after Oryx dead, we killed Oryx and we left the throne empty. The way the sword logic works is we're supposed to take the throne. That's what Tolan, who's dead but not dead, he's kind of shattered, that's why they call him Tolan the Shattered. He's spread out through the Ascendant Realm, and there's a lore entry where he's just bitching at us, saying, that's not how the fucking sword logic works. That's not how it works. You're supposed to take the throne. If you leave the throne empty, that everything's gonna go wrong, and then the power is gonna get unbalanced, and he's just like freaking out, and it's just long tirade of Tolan just losing his mind.
He constantly complains about everything and basically sums up, don't trust anybody. Everybody is out for themselves and will eventually screw you over. But then he also bitches at you because you're the one who killed Oryx. And by how the sword logic works, you were supposed to take over. And so the Queen tried to and failed.
Yeah, and so because of that, we're going more theory crafting, is that Savathun's going to try to take that seat. Because she basically is trying to get enough power and tithe to be close enough to Oryx. So she was, back then, she tricked Crota into opening a portal for the Vex to invade fucking Oryx's throne world. It's like, it's equivalent to a bumbling son going, hey, look at this hole. Oh, what does it do? Dooms! I opened the entire Vex race to invade and try to figure out how, to the point where the Vex figured out how the sword logic works, and they applied it to their own ideology.
They were able to simulate the sword logic.
Yeah.
So Savathun's a dick who constantly tries to kill her own family, and literally doesn't care how to do it.
So she
and Oryx was aware of it, and so he always loved humoring. That's why after Oryx stepped in and said, "All right, son, I got this," saved Crota, and also subsequently his own throne world, because they're all connected technically. Moved on to Vex, kept one of them alive, which was this giant Hydra, which is enemy type.
Think of it like a giant supercomputer, like a node and a hub, because the way the Vex are a hive mind. So the ants are basically the soldiers, while the giant queen, or not like really queen, but like the central hub, is the Vex Hydras. Those Hydras basically control all the processes, run the simulations, and the Gorgons are basically these little things that can wipe people. That's part of all the glass, but like the little tiny what are they called? Harpies are basically like the sentries. And the snipers are the hobgoblins, and the goblins are the ants, or the foot soldiers. Korea is a Vex mind specifically designed to try to simulate Oryx. And it did it, but it didn't do it properly. Because what it did is it simulated Oryx. Not Oryx, Oryx. Oryx is basically osmium Oryx. And Oryx was severely impressed by this, but he still took him. But what he did is to take it to remove the willpower and ability and implant your own will onto a being, a lesser being. So he took Korea, this mind that can simulate basically Oryx before he became Oryx, and left a tiny bit of willpower and then gifted it to Savathun, saying, this is very interesting, you should have a look at this. Knowing that the way those sisters work is they're trying to constantly kill each other, he knew that that was a possibility, and he gifted it to Savathun. So Savathun has been utilizing this because that's what she was trying to figure out, is because the black hole worked time differently. In a sense that where she tried to make it trick the worm, and the worm caught on that the time was moving differently, and then it devoured these thrall that she was experimenting on. So she came up with an idea to use Korea as a murder battery, plus Ahamkara magic to start the wish, to make a Vex simulation into reality by using Ahamkara magic. So, Savathun's been pulling strings from the background since the start of Destiny 2, and even in the beginning, like near Oryx, she's been like trying to climb her way up, and she's getting there, and she's pretty much there, because the whole point of Forsaken was Riven being corrupted, taken by Oryx, but then being re-put in control by Savathun, and Savathun wished that, Savathun made a wish, but it was in tandem with the Guardian, which is really cool. And the gameplay aspect is that the first 6 Guardians that did the world's first raid, quote unquote, wished they could save the Dreaming City. By doing that, that was corrupted, and Riven died, or I guess Ahamkara don't really die. They still live on through the bones. But when they
transcend death and they basically transcend reality at that point.
They can still do wishes and have a conscience after they die through of their body. That's why there's various exotics. There's a lot of very exotic Ahamkara, and then those provide power and wishes, but like, there was one mini lore story where someone had a Ahamkara bone, and they like hunted them down, and like, you should not have that. Like, even having bones of Ahamkara is like fucking dangerous. Like, even because the Great Hunt existed and everybody killed it, but some people kept the bones. I think Eris has one too.
Yes,
is actually a piece of Ahamkara bone that she got.
But so Savathun's been working in the background, and then the final wish when we killed Ribbon was for the Dreaming City to be saved, but it was saved, but it was overly taken by corruption. And so the way it works with the whole running simulations with Korea and trying to figure out how Oryx does his taking, because she doesn't have the ability, and she doesn't have the ability to kill her worm yet, because she's not as strong as Oryx was. The city runs through a taken corruption level of the cycle of 3 weeks, of real-time 3 weeks.
Oh, you mean? Oh, okay, so that's cool.
In our reality, the taken corruption gets worse and worse every week, and as of last week, it was at its worst. And what that is Guardians were. This is where I'm gapped because I haven't done that content, and I haven't really found any way to do it. But from my understanding, is Duan Karu, who is basically Savathun's daughter, is running, helping Korea run this simulation, or this real-life simulation, of basically the Awoken City being decimated and taken over and over and over. And the more they kill, feeds into the murder battery that feeds into the tithe of Savathun. So basically giving her power by doing nothing.
If you want to think about like just how complex, but also like mindfuck type this whole like plan is, the Dreaming City
Raw.
So the Dreaming City right now is on a 3-week curse cycle where every week it gets more and more corrupted, and it visually changes as well to certain aspects of the actual area. And once it hits its 3rd week, you as a Guardian can then perform this quote-unquote dungeon kind of like a mix between a strike, a raid, and a patrol zone.
Like a bit of RNG.
Yeah, it's
like a chalice. It's like a chalice dungeon, basically.
It's very interesting. It's the first, and as of right now, the only thing of its kind, and people absolutely love it. But basically, you go into Mars' ascendant realm that's been corrupted by Savathun and Oryx, and you attempt to basically cure the Dream City of this curse. And you go through all these things. You go up this tower, where you then come face to face with Dawn Karu, Savathun's daughter, who you presume is the person kind of doing all this corruption, and kill her. The annoying thing is that the way the switches were set up by Savathun and Riven to kind of contrast the wish that was made by the Guardians, is that not only did the Guardians wish to help the Dream City and kill Riven, cause corruption to form that slowly takes over it, but every time they try to kill the person in charge of it, Dawn Karu, it resets everything. It resets time in that space for every being in it except for Guardians, because of the way our light works.
We are paracausal beings. We affect reality based on existing.
Yeah, so we can't be affected by it, but everyone else in it stays in the loop. They're aware that they're in a time loop, but they can't do anything to change. So all the Awoken that are there have to constantly live through doing the same actions while still being sentiently conscious of the fact that it's going. Like in one of the first missions you do,
think about that.
It's so much fun fuckery, and you end up basically being given this choice as a guardian. You can choose to either constantly every week you kill enemies in this horde type
dungeon, like.
No, I'm talking about the well.
It's like a whole. You can basically purify a certain area with the well over and over, or you let the Dreaming City get corrupted, and then Savathun's plan wins. There's no winning. It's equivalent to basically knowing that you're going to trip on a nail every time, and then every time you do that nail, you go back in time, and you're preset. It's a predetermined event and a predetermined timeline.
And every time you try to change it, it resets. So it's so annoying, and they still to this day constantly have it, and you constantly just question, what are we doing? Is there any way around this? So it's very interesting, my fuckery. And then there's this whole lore thing, known as the Truth to Power, that also is this huge mindfuck, because you read through it and it makes all these claims like, are you talking to Erisborn? Are you talking to actual Korea? Or is this all just Savathun fucking? You've given all of these truths and lies mixed together and these scenarios, and you just don't know what's real and what's true, and no idea how to stop any of this because it's so contradictory. At one point in it, you're basically supposedly actually talking with Dawn Karu, and she basically says, I look at you as more of a mother or father to me than my own actual mother, because while you have killed me, you have also given birth to me more times than any other being has, because again, she keeps dying, but then she keeps coming back.
That's how it's twisted.
So it's so interesting, but it is, in my opinion, in anything in Destiny, the biggest trickery and mindfuck of any lore piece in the game.
It really is.
You don't know what to do.
Savathun was just this weird, fucked up character. Out of all the Hive Gods, she's the most interesting. I mean, as I said before, she explained this entire plan that we just talked about for the past 10 minutes to a thrall. She's just she explained it, she called it a random ass thrall, and just said her entire plan. It's like an evil villain telling you the entire plan, but just to the minion idiot.
Yeah. No, but then it also makes sense, because for her plans to work, she needs to make sure it's so convoluted that not a simple mind like that of a thrall would be able to understand it. Because if they did, then it wouldn't be tricky.
It's not convoluted. Yeah. she's just plans on plans on plans on plans on plans. So it's very interesting, and I think the whole thing you're probably going to go into for Shadowkeep is probably choreo.
Yes, but first let me just say how sad I am that the time loop is so convoluted and messed up that I feel sorry for that one awoken warrior who keeps getting shot in the gut, even though she knows she's gonna get shot. She'll always get shot regardless of what she tries to do.
Oh God.
Yeah,
What ghost story is that?
No, it's not a ghost story. So when you do the mission, so there's a weekly mission in the Dreaming City. It's a different one for each week cycle, and the first one that you do for the first week basically starts off with you saving an awoken soldier that got shot in the line of duty, and you basically go over to save it and protect it until help comes to take her. And as the weeks go by, she'll talk to you, basically saying every time I go through this, I try to stop it from happening, but I end up getting shot. And sometimes I wonder, will Guardian come this time, or will I simply die? And she has to suffer through both her own failure of being in this near-death state, and waiting, hoping that the Guardian will come this time. Because there's been many loops of this, and she knows she can never do anything about it. She just has to constantly experience this failure and pain.
In a similar story, I'm gonna just go over because before we jump into Shadowkeep and we start talking our heads off being lore heads, what is your favorite? I have a couple favorite lore tidbits and just small stuff. Not from the main lore, but small stuff. There's one ghost story that's kind of similar to that, which I found weird that the main lore masters, Bife and Mylan, didn't really cover it, and I think Bife talked about it, but didn't Here's a fun question. Why don't we go back to the Almighty?
Okay.
So there is a lore that talks about,
which is what I'm going to talk about. That I'm about to mention it. But why don't we go back to the Almighty? Why don't we use that giant weapon that was created by the Cabal that eats planets for fuel and destroys other planets with that? I don't know. Maybe because.
Wait, that just makes it sound like you're talking about Leviathan, but I know what you're talking about. Yes.
No, because that's what the Cabal usually use.
Well, it does. It's because the Almighty was consuming
mercury
in order to fuel itself, and it was.
I'm leading into this.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's right. I forgot about that.
So you use mercury as fuel. What is mercury made of? Vex? Okay. Yeah. They're made of entirely Vex. They terraform that planet in days. Okay. So you're using Vex as fuel. There's a ghost story that talks about one Guardian who decides to go to the Almighty and and do basically what I've said. Why haven't we gone to the Almighty and everything else? And basically the Vex put him in this giant death loop simulation, and he can't do anything about it. And you know what's sad about it? The ghost, you can hear the anguish in its overall log, and it's
his ghost got out.
His ghost is trying to revive him, but he can't revive him because he's stuck in this fucking loop. So he just flies back to Earth, and this is basically his story. And it's just small. It's so depressing, but it's holy shit. That's how bad the Vex are. That's what makes them so interesting. They took a Guardian who can't die and put him through a loop so he can't die, but he just goes through this same loop over and over, and he's just walking. It's basically if I were to walk up and go hi, and then I'm hi, and you just keep walking forward, and you can't do anything. You're just stuck in this fucking loop. It's
Wait, are you using a loop? I thought he was stuck in this weird time trap where his action will take several years to finish.
Yeah, that's a loop, though.
Hundreds of years.
Hundreds of years.
Hundreds.
It's hundreds of years. Hundreds of years in a loop. But he can't get out. That's why it took forever, because they put him in... Basically, they slowed time and then made it a loop on top of that. It's just fucked up. It just shows how fucked up the Vex are. It's just such a cool tidbit of story. Plus the one that's titled Thank You, which I've already mentioned, that Savathun tells her entire plan to a thrall. And she calls it marvelous and spontaneous, and she's so whimsical with the way she phrases her words, and it just sounds like really weird ways. It's just enigmatic. It's like a mad scientist saying it's magnificent. It's just corny. It's just for a very threatening race. It's very corny. It's just very corny how she talks to the people. and stuff like that. So, like, what are you guys' favorite stories before we get into the heavy meat of what Shadowkeep's going to bring into our lives?
Honestly, I like a lot of the lore that involves the city and like little tidbits here and there. There's some like very meta ones, such as citizens of the last city saying how weird guardians are because they like see them in the tower having random dance parties. Yeah, they'll just jump off for no reason, or they'll just like stand. They'll just like go into the middle of the tower and start having random dance parties with no music playing. So like, I find that stuff funny. There's one of my favorite characters in terms of just like just comical things, especially since Kate is dead now, is Shax. Because he is just so quickly, Shax is a Titan who is in charge of the Crucible, which is the PvP mode, and he is famous because he was originally a warlord back when warlords were a thing in Destiny, which was basically when right after Guardians were first created. They were first known as simply Risen, and a lot of them end up becoming literal warlords where they like took over areas and would have fights with each other and would kill anybody who like went against their ideals, and that's why that was known as like Dark Heroes. Then the best of them basically became the Iron Lords and switched to a more like justice-driven thing and killed any of the remaining warlords who went against them. But Shax was one of these beings, and people feared him for a great time. And then he's in charge of the Crucible, and he's all about Guardians fighting each other to become stronger and prepare themselves.
Because this is the Battle of Six Fronts, and also the like just the giant it's just to prepare Guardians so they know what they're doing.
Yeah. So that's the logic behind why PvP is a thing, especially because if Guardians kill each other, they can just come back. But he's so comical,
Forever Guardian.
He has so many great lines, such as like after you lose, he goes, your problem is Guardian, you didn't throw enough grenades. Throw more grenades. He'll have lines in the tower where he's like, what do you mean I'm too loud? This is my quiet voice. He's great, and there's a lot of funny lore with him, such as a possible love thing with him and Mara, as well as the dodgeball thing with Cade. So he once lost a bet with Cade, and Cade had him drive out to outskirts of the city, where basically Cade made him coach a group of kids in preparation for a dodgeball tournament.
Aww.
And it is both adorable, but also absolutely hilarious, because the way he's talking to them, like almost like they're about to go
like soldiers.
Yeah, it's like soldiers preparing for war, telling him to annihilate their enemy, and these are fucking like 10, 12-year-old children. So it's great. I absolutely love a lot of those like little things about
lines are amazing.
Yeah.
Who said warlocks are better than guns? All right, wait.
No.
They just also a motivator.
Yeah, no. Who said warlocks are only good with books? I'll be honest, it was me. It's like, but I was lying. Rage is an excellent motivator, so he's great. Actually, my favorite line with him.
The one where he's hard out of the Vex.
Yeah, that's a good one. My favorite, actually my other favorite one outside of that one is another one with Warlocks. Is when you get onto I think it's either 10 or 15 kill streak. It's basically like, call the Thananots, summon the Jensen Scribes. They must witness you.
So the 25 kill streak is just amazing.
He has all kinds of great things, so he's enjoyable, and I love any time they talk about his history, his stories.
Do you mind if I cut in for a little bit?
Sure.
We've been talking for about an hour.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever gone through what we were talking, go through for our agenda.
No, I think we got through most of it. We cut through most of it.
We just haven't talked about the post-Activision content
Yeah,
stuff.
so
Got it.
so basically that's how they were, and now they're just doing single expansions, and that's where we're gonna move into Shadowkeep right now.
Let me just
I did
ask
say
you
I-
guys real fast.
I
then.
DM'd them, and yeah.
Let me just ask you guys real fast. So, with Shadowkeep coming up and with the split from Activision, what kind of changes are we seeing? Actually, I'm not too informed on that. And what do you guys feel about those changes? Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
Wait, before that, I just want to say my favorite thing is related to Shaq's as well, and that's basically when Mara finally called him up on the favor he owes her, and she told him to basically read Shakespeare's The Tempest. Except he was so he basically got teleported there when Mara made a wish on the wishing wall, which basically caused Riven Diamkar to call him, teleport him from Earth directly in front of Mara. Well,
in the middle of a crucible game, he was summoned.
Yeah, he gets summoned, and he has coffee in his hand, right? He was yelling at someone, and then when he got teleported, he was finishing that sentence, and he dropped his coffee and says, "What the heck?" And then, of course, Mara basically just took that coffee mug he was still holding, smashed it in the floor, gives him a book and says, "Here, read this." And then Shax basically gets so mad, he says, "Nobody told me what to do." Vaporizes the book and says, "I can perform the Tempest by heart." And then he basically does so. And then, of course, the last sentence of this lore says, "The helmet never came off."
Yeah. It was absolutely hilarious. That was something that was a Valentine's Day lore thing.
It was great.
It was nobody told me I can recite the word. It just no, seriously, his lines are fucking great. Where it's just like, I can kill a Vex, I can rip its heart out. I was like, oh, I've been playing too much Crucible.
It's great. So moving on to the post-acquisition changes.
Yes.
So in terms of gameplay mechanics or quality of life changes that they have planned, that they have at least released to us, one of the things is they are doing transmogging for armor. So armor is probably the biggest change for next season, and it's two main things. One is so Eververse every season would have this seasonal armor that you can either buy with real currency or through Bright Dust, which is currency you get by dismantling items. Basically, and the Eververse armor is generally, for the most part, well designed and cool looking. But they always drop with terrible rolls and lowest light level possible. They did that so that it wouldn't be considered pay to win to buy a ton of it. So they purposely made it shitty game wise. But some of the stuff is really cool looking.
The one of the sparrows that I love using is it's basically all Warminded out. It has Warmind tech, and it makes a Warmind basically a Rasputin trail. I like that, and then my ghost is actually a mini Rasputin.
Right, and there's and that's also actually one thing others from Chris Osiris, for instance, makes you look very Vex-like, which is so reminiscent of Destiny 1, so it's great. So what they're doing with Shadowkeep is all both past and future Eververse armor will be ornamented that you will be able to apply to any Year 3 armor piece. So now if you want your armor to look a certain way that you like, you can just apply that ornament and make it look like that. So you no longer have to have that problem where you have to choose between having cool looking armor and very good armor. So they're doing that by basically allowing you to change the way your armor looks as you see.
I have the news post up if you want me to do a little bit of read through. So the Bright Dust was basically what you used. You would buy stuff through the Eververse store using silver, which is real life currency, and it was for cosmetic only. I covered this a tiny bit last podcast in regards to how much irritation I'd had towards loot boxes, because all this cosmetic stuff, you could buy them on a set items, but a lot of them were locked behind these engrams that were automatically run through a loot box and you have a small chance, and it was frustrating. It's the same thing like how Overwatch handled it, but you could earn these in game, it just take fucking forever, and you wouldn't have a chance at an exotic or a really cool armor, and then the next season would come by and you would just lose all that. So you could use Bright Dust to buy stuff in a weekly updated list, but it wasn't always ideal. Like, I think last week wasn't even that good. It was like Syntheseps, and I was like, I don't really care about Syntheseps. So basically what they're saying for Bright Dust is historically the best way to earn Bright Dust in Destiny 2 has been buy a bunch of Bright Engrams, which is what the loot boxes are called, shard everything from the Engrams, then build a giant bankroll of Bright Dust, and then spend them while the Warlock Dire Humkar shows up Bright Dust in the last week of the season. We're going to change this. This fall, we're changing Bright Dust to pay and or pay to earn currency to play to earn currency. We're adding Bright Dust as a reward for completing Vanguard, Crucible, Gambit, which is the game type that was introduced as another Crucible type game but a little more harder. We want all players to earn dust for playing, not for spending money and destroying a bunch of their items in their hit inventory. After you complete their bounties for the week, there will be another avenue to keep grinding out Bright Dust. It's been pretty uncool to go to the collection screen, because that was a major improvement for Destiny 2, is that any of the armor I earn, I can rebuy, but I'd have to use Bright Dust. So collection screen and spend Bright Dust to get shaders, which was this dumb thing that they did. Shaders used to be just things you unlock and you can just get them anytime. Now they're like consumables because you can apply them to different parts of your armor. That was a cool quality of life thing, but it was pretty annoying. And it's still annoying that I have an inventory limit of shaders. If I delete them, I can't get them all back. And to delete them, I had to do it one by one. So I have 50 of one shader, I have to constantly delete them.
Well, now you can do it 5 at a time.
You can do it 5 at a time? Okay.
You have to go to Master and Rule, and yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Raul actually.
Or Ghost Shells or whatever. We're gonna fix that too. Beginning September 17th, which is when Shadowkeep comes out, Eververse items in your collections will cost Glimmer and Legendary Shards. If you want to keep pulling out that exotic sparrow that looks like a motorcycle, I have that. Until you get the Good Sparrow perk, Instant Summon, you can do that too, with Legendary Shards and Glimmer. And then for changes to dismantling the Eververse item, lastly, we're changing the cost of putting things in collections. Eververse items will no longer dismantle into Bright Dust. This fall, Eververse items will dismantle into Legendary Shards and Glimmer. However, that means right now the absolute best thing to do, and I already done that for most of my stuff, is delete everything in your bank that has to do with Eververse and turn them into dust and stockpile up. So sitting on a pile of Midnight Talons or a Metro Shift from your one stockpiles, shard them to dust. That's right, everything must go. Dismantle the extra stuff you have in inventory, build a huge amount of Bright Dust, and spend it on sweet stuff as it rolls in the Eververse store, just because as of September 17th, Ever changes. So the TLDR for Twitter, which is awesome they did this in the news post. This is Bungie post Activision. They've done a lot of things good. All Eververse armor, new armor and armor you've already acquired is being converted to Universal Ornaments. Universal Ornaments can be attached to any newly acquired legendary armor. Bright Dust is going to come in from doing bounties, not dismantling things you got for money on. Eververse items are now pulled from your collections and Glimmer Legendary Shards instead of Bright Dust. Before December 17th, dismantle all your Eververse items to maximize your Bright Dust reserves. And that's from Luke Smith, head of Games Design. That is an amazing first step. Another good thing, and this will also transition, is that there's cross-save. There's finally cross-save. I'm part of the crowd where I wanted to get PC, all my friends ditched me on PC. I've been a solo player all of Destiny 2. And I can't not give up my save. I put way too much time, and I said I had 1,200 hours in Destiny 1. The really cool thing that they did is when you were a Destiny 1 player and a veteran for Destiny 1 player, there was veteran dialogue where they would talk, there would be subtle changes in how cutscenes would work and how you'd find scannable objects, and they would have different dialogues. People in the city will react differently to you and give you different titles, because you were when you killed Oryx in D1, you were called Hivebane, or God Killer. And there's a cutscene where you're talking with Ghost and you're flying back, and there's it's a really, really big difference. It's like, what's a hive god? And people are like, what's a worm god? And it's just completely thrown out the window if you just play vanilla D2 without any saves. All my emblems, all my accolades, none of that would have transferred over to PC because of Sony being a-holes. and Activision being with Sony and a partnership deal with Call of Duty, preventing Bungie from doing cross-save. I mean, I like to point out that the fact that this cross-save thing was going to happen, but like Sony agreed the day of Shadowkeep was announced. The day of. So I'm super happy to bring over. I've been holding out. I mean, I didn't play Destiny because of this whole thing of like, if I go to PC, there's no point in me playing any of the content that I just purchased and bringing it over. If there's no reason, I'm gonna have to start all over again. There's no point. All my hard work that I've done in Destiny 1. I mean, that was in the beginning things like none of the weapons, they did a clean slate. None of my weapons from D1 transferred over. And the reasoning is that Gaul basically destroyed our armory while attacking City. Lore-wise, it makes sense. Doesn't make sense for me to start over for a third time. So I just Destiny. I paid attention to Destiny's lore because that was the main draw for me. Gameplay and grind and loot and staying up for 10 hours straight and not realizing what time it is was the draw for it. But dude, that's what Destiny provides for me is a sustainable game that is made by some developers of Bungie, some 343 devs that moved over for Bungie or came over, having some EA developers and some just like NU Bungie, who came from the end of Halo and just made a new world. I mean, with the troubled development of D1 and everything else, and having Paul McCartney do the original soundtrack at the beginning of the Destiny 1, and Marty, but then having New Blood and not having Marty do all the soundtracks, and just having like each individual soundtrack being different. It's just cross-save. It just Destiny brings a lot of things to me, and losing all that progress, it just didn't sting well with me. And with them announcing this, it's a godsend. I've actually lost sleep, and I've stayed up all night for at least the last part of these 2 weeks because of the curse of the knowledge of having cross-save. I've done so many exotic quests that I've lost count.
Because the saves will be...
Just because by the time Shadowkeep comes out and I'll have PC by then, I'll have all my stuff, I'll have my veteran dialogue, I'll have a shit ton. Like, I am right now, I was trying to get Whisper and Solo Whisper at a high level, because the recommended level for Whisper is 360, and to get Whisper of the Worm, you have to do it in 20 minutes, and you have to do a jumping puzzle ahead of time, and that is a bitch to do. I've done that jumping puzzle so many times to the point where I can speed run at least half of it. I know where all the chests are. I know how to get through. I can get all the chests in at least less than 5 minutes now, because I've done that way too many times. And then that's how much like it's like I've fallen off those fucking jumping puzzles way too many times to like even give a shit. It's like, fuck. I'm just like, okay, run through here. Okay, get to the end. Okay, now to get my ship, and because there's a secret part to get you a catalyst for a sleeper simulant. You shoot the things in 357. It's a 3-6-4. I memorized all the oracles you had to kill. Like, nice. I'm back in the game, and I'm staring at the screen right now, and like I'm going to Zur while I'm talking about this. Because I'm fucking hooked again, and I blame cross-save for this. Because
it really is an exciting thing, and it's also a breath of fresh air
of relief
to know that Bungie always wanted to do cross-save. They built it to Destiny 2, actually, like from the get-go.
Oh, really?
They just were never allowed to do it. They never directly say why, but there's a line that they say where they kind of indirectly blame Activision for
they said in the doc, actually. They said because reasons, and they just put in quote marks, like, yeah, those reasons.
Yeah.
It's like they've been throwing shade at Activision so much. Because Activision also stated Forsaken was a disappointing launch, and like Luke Smith was like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's one of our best like expansions ever. What do you mean disappointing in sales? So those tensions made them break away, and with the infusion of cash to let them break away from their 10-year contract, because the contract was supposed to end this year, but they broke away at year 9 and was given I think it was NetEase to make, or Tencent, one of those two, basically gave them enough money to break away from their contract. And as of now, Bungie finally acknowledges it as an MMO because Activision wouldn't let them call it MMO because it would be too spoopy to the casual crowd because then there's a lot of commitment. But like people like, come on guys, it's an MMO. It's an MMO looter shooter. It's the first of it. It's one of the first of its kind for at least that kind of scope of game. Because I mean, you can go back and say Borderlands, but it's
multiplayer in the same way.
So I want to ask about
Yeah.
that. Like, for you veterans' opinions, what do you feel about Destiny being labeled as an MMO, in addition to the fact that it's becoming free to play now? Like, any opinions on that? Do you like that? Do you dislike
I'm a little
that?
salty that I paid a shit ton of money for all those expansions, but and also the annual pass for them to announce it's free to play, and all the rest of that stuff is kind of free to play. But at the same time, it's giving money to Bungie. As much as I don't want to give money to Activision, like it's giving money to Bungie. Like I don't. Sure, cool. I spend all that money, but like I got cool shit out of it. I have really cool collector's editions out of it.
Yeah,
I have a lore book and physical thing. They print physical lore books now, actually.
Yeah, they do.
There's actually volume 2. It's published by Dark Horse. I actually gifted it to my friend who's hadn't had the chance to actually come on, who's also a giant lore nut. And I gifted him, and he just, I was like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm reading the book. Like, the volume 1 covers Destiny 1 lore, and it just covers a shit ton of like a giant chunk of it covers the Books of Sorrow, which is the highest origin, and I think Bungie is going in the right direction. I mean, they have the whole Bungie reward system, so rather than doing moments of triumph and then being tied to that, you just do certain things in the game and you get codes to buy shit in the store that's themed to that.
Right, like for instance,
my Thunderlord shirt.
Yeah, you get a Thunderlord shirt, you can complete Thunderlord quest, you can get a Thorn shirt, complete that, a Last Word shirt. If you complete a new raid within the first week of its completion of its release, you can buy a jacket themed to that raid, where you can then have your name embroidered on it.
Oh wow!
It's
in real life or is this in game?
Yeah.
No, this is a real physical, high quality.
These are real physical.
Oh.
Yeah, all my Moments of Triumph shirt have my username on it on my sleeve. All of them do.
That's cool.
Raid jackets will have that too, actually.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Also,
it's an exciting thing. Last season for Gambit Prime, because it was themed around roles, you could get jerseys.
One of those.
Yeah, you can get
jerseys.
Yeah, you can get a jersey themed to one of the roles after you completed a certain triumph regarding that role. So that is a very cool thing.
Just for a brief explanation, Gambit, the way it works is it's a PvE, PvP kind of game type. So the idea is that in the PvE element, you're basically killing mobs, and they drop motes of dark. And there are random mobs from different evil factions. And what you do is you collect all these motes of dark. And what you do is you deposit them. Depending on how many motes you put, sabotages the other team, and the other team drops a blocker so they can't deposit anything, and sometimes they could get really ridiculous, like fucking because the way it is it 6v6 or 3v3?
It's a 4v4.
4v4. So if you have 4 blockers, you have to deal with 4 blockers while the other team is still collecting motes. On top of that, the PvP element lets one person, after a certain period of time, go through a portal and invade the other people to kill them. And if you kill them, they drop all their motes, and that means that team has to start over at a certain point. And you can wipe the entire team and fuck them over. Now, after you get a certain amount of motes, I think it's 75, you summon a Prime Evil, and that Prime Evil is a boss. And what you do is you have both teams trying to kill that boss. If someone invades, then and kills another person, the boss gets its health back. And then it's a giant like FU and a middle finger, because if you wipe the entire team and the boss has like 50% and now is 100 or 75% health, you basically get advantage, and that's the way you win. And then so the rewards it was giving is basically the different elements. So if you were an invader, you would get a red jersey, and then in game,
that's cool.
You can do thing called so Gambit was lore-wise. Gambit was basically training us for if you think of it as a heist, Gambit was training us for the heist. Gambit Prime is the heist. Is to teach us how to use the dark and learn to be the gray, and that's kind of what the theming of we're getting into D3 territory where we're not the Guardian who can only learn light. We're more of the gray, and there's only a couple of people who have transcended that design of being light only. And so, like, you get these jerseys, and one's red, and in game it's like a red outline. It's like I think an ornament that makes you red, and it like signifies it. And you can actually gain EXP towards that ornament to get a better glow or better sheen or better armor, based on how many times you were an invader, or how many times you call the Reaper, which is Reapers basically you kill mobs and you collect the things, and then you kill the most PvE enemies. And then there is the collector who just runs around and picks up shit and just deposits it, and that's orange. White is another color.
No. White is collector. Yellow is
sentry.
Or yellow. Yep, sorry. Why did I say orange? Yellow sentry.
Yellow sentry. Red is invader, and then Reaper is green.
Yes.
And it's just a really cool thing that they're doing. I'm really excited for Season of Opulence, because that's gonna be mostly Callus related, and like gold and purple and white embroidered, like probably merch or something like that. And then we're gonna get into next week. So Rezalzir has a weapon called Thorn. Rezalzir was Dredgen Yor. Before he was Dredgen Yor, he's Rezalzir. Rezalzir had a weapon called Rose, and it was the best hand cannon. Rezalzir was this big giant, basically on the tier of like say 14. He was a world-renowned Titan, the Crucible. He had very, 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 very prideful and very, very big balls. So his idea was, well, Crota's asleep and there's a giant threat on the moon where most of the Hive have occupied, at least for Crota's faction. I'm gonna go single-handedly to the moon and kill Crota. That didn't go well. He was corrupted by a Hive wizard, and he had that. Basically, Rezalzir died on that moon and came back as Dredgen Yor. And Dredgen Yor, I think it was during the Dark Ages where all the warlords just wiped out cities for the sake of it. So he's gone.
No, he existed after the Dark. He existed after the city.
It was during the city.
Yes,
okay, yeah.
because he back when.
Because I remember Victor talking about warlords.
Yes, but Dredgen Yor, before he was Dredgen Yor, I keep forgetting what his original name was. Yeah. Was a well-known figure in the Crucible.
Yeah,
that's how it's known that he was around during as Dredgen Yor. No, it was around as Dredgen Yor.
Dredgen Yor was post Dark Ages, but he was Rezalzir during the Dark Ages, from my understanding.
Most likely, yes.
Yeah, because the warlords came around, and the Shadows, which are people who followed the creed. So Dredgen Yor basically had this creed he followed around, and then when he was killed by Shin Malphur, which is entirely different. But my point is that next week we get to have Rose. And that's fucking amazing.
Rose and whatever that other gun is.
No, but the gun they keep showing us they keep calling it something else, but it's actually Rose. Lumina, but
I don't think it's Rose. Rose for the most part was just an ordinary hand cannon that was just had like some like details on it, but the gun itself didn't actually look, all like the petals and the thorns and everything. The concept with Thorn was that Hive bone was attached to it and then formed into
he was down in the pit, basically in the part of my assumption is basically in the part of Crota's raid, there's a part where you have to run through certain areas. It's just completely black, and there's just Thrall coming at you, and he's basically got stuck there. And he just kept killing Thrall, and what he did is he take Hive bones, and then it attached it to a ship, attached to his gun, because he believed the idea of Hive being powerful, and he wanted to be like them. And so it basically got corrupted and morphed under the High Wizard who whispered that, like, a terrible thought. But yeah, Lumia is coming out next week, and that's Season of Opulence. But the Shadowkeep, if we're going to get on to Shadowkeep,
let's do it. Time for some Shadowkeep.
That's going to be really interesting. Let me read off at least the minor synopsis. It's basically called off Bungie's website. A new chapter. We go to the moon again.
Moon's haunted.
That wizard came from the moon.
That wizard, please. I need that reference, please.
Yes, please.
More wizard friend came to the moon. A new chapter. As the heroes of the last safe city turn their attention to frontiers beyond the protection of the Vanguard, new nightmares have emerged from the shadows of our long-forgotten moon, calling forth the haunting visions from her tormented past. Eris Morn has returned and unleashed something that has slumbered underneath the lunar surface, a long-dormant power even she cannot control. Preface. Eris Morn has been missing since the Red Legion attack. The last thing we've had, at least any contact, is that she sent Asher Mir, who is basically the vendor and main person of Io, which is a terraformed world created by the Traveler, and basically a second Earth. Saying that she needs to go and she needs to look into something. That's all we've heard from her. So, Eris was also the same person who handled most of the hive-related content, being Crota and also Oryx. She's also one of the last survivors because back then, which is called the Great Catastrophe, we sent 1,000 Guardians to the moon to kill Crota and no one survived. So then we sent another raid team to go kill Crota and everyone was tortured and or killed.
The raid team was not Vanguard.
What?
The raid team to...
No, I'm saying, and we sent a raid team. I'm not saying it is Vanguard. It was just a raid team to go kill Crota. And only Eris survived. A lone hunter. And she's not the same when she comes back. She became obsessed with the hive to the point where I think she was blinded and then she took hive eyes into her face. And that kind of gives her the ability to see what the hive are doing.
Yeah, so there's currently some debate over if she's actually blind or not, but other than that, yeah, she basically took the eyes of hive so she could see and survive in the dark for several years before escaping herself.
So yeah, and the moon has been dormant because Crota's dead, and Omnigul's not doing shit anymore because we killed her 800 times. Omnigul is also the witch that kept trying to bring Crota back. All that aside, this is pure theory crafting as of now, so complete theory crafting territory. Over what we've covered in the last hour or so, it's Savathun. It's Savathun, Quoria, and Nokris as one single thing. It makes sense. Because if you look, the way that they've shown it off is that all the things that we've killed throughout the year since 2014, it shows the Gate Lord, it shows Gaul, because I've watched that trailer at least 4 times to see who's in that picture. A lot of it's blurred. I'm looking on a thread in regards to who it is, and some people are saying oh, it's Atheon. I'm I would love to have Atheon come back as a boss, part of the raid, because that would really be really cool. Is because there's a line actually when you're wiped, where it says you're lost the corners of darkness, and it's part of the. It's a really cool line because it kind of hints around Shadowkeep, but then also it goes over Tanyx. He serves no house as well, and also I think Skolas as well was in that photo. The original Gate Lord we killed in the Black Garden. The original Gate Lord we killed in the Black Garden is one of them too. So everything we've killed is now either going to be a strike boss or going to be a raid boss or be something. And they're
Adventure boss,
undead,
possibly.
Or adventure boss. Maybe, I don't know. It brings a lot of possibilities lore-wise because
we know what the rate is for Shadowkeep.
What is it? Was it basically
Black Garden?
Black Garden's gonna be raid.
Yep. They showed a tiny bit of footage of Guardians going through the Black Garden and stated that you're going to the Black Garden again as the raid for this next season.
And just for a lore kind of perspective, tiny deal, the Black Garden is basically the first thing at the end of the campaign for D1, and it was basically a giant worshipping station to the darkness by the Vex, and it was so powerful that it was draining light from the dormant traveler.
Damn.
Basically.
Yep.
Yeah.
Basically, they were worshiping some sort of black blob, and that black blob gave them the power to siphon light.
Because they learned from the hive how to worship the darkness doing the sword logic. So they adopted the sword logic. So that's one faction of the Vex who wanted to learn about that. So if that's the case, if we're going back to Black Garden, oh boy, that's prime darkness territory right there. Then that's really interesting. Holy shit. Yeah, because what is known about the Black Garden is what we know, but it's not that big because of how Destiny was handled content-wise and lore.
Like, are the rest of you guys looking forward to the Black Garden raid, or like, what do you expect to see coming out from the Black Garden raid?
Yeah,
Black Garden is one of the most beautiful settings in all of Destiny, and you really only go to it for like the final campaign mission for vanilla Destiny,
and a hunter subquest to get the third ability, basically.
Yep. But basically, it's just a place where we never actually like stayed long enough to actually like absorb. Like we just knew stories and like minor lore pieces about it, and it's basically just like a place we definitely want to look into because it's said to also be a possible birthplace for the Vex. So it's something we gotta take a look into, and see how that goes.
I mean, based on what you guys know of Destiny lore overall, what do you think will take place in this raid, in this Black Garden raid? Like,
we might kill Coria.
Let's see Sabathun.
Yeah,
might kill Coria.
We might kill Coria because this is a Vex themed location, and Coria is the primary like processor that is currently being used for Sabathun to unleash your evil plan. It might be a way to finally break the curse and everything.
ooh.
But I also say Nocris because we didn't kill him. We didn't kill him.
Well, we don't know. Yeah, we don't know because if he is a son, if he's a Oryx, he should have his own throne world.
I don't think
he doesn't properly follow the sword logic. So that's why it's hard.
So he doesn't have a throne world. Yeah, that's
exactly. So we don't know. Well, again, we don't even know if sword logic is fully truly needed for a throne world to exist because there might be other avenues to create it. I mean, the Queen certainly didn't use sword logic to create her throne world.
She used Ribbon's magic and also Oryx's own throne world to create her own pocket side part of that. That's why Oryx was so easily to invade it. So there are other means.
There are other means to create it. So I feel like it's entirely possible because remember, Oryx's son was still pretty cunning as a necromancer, and he did learn directly from one of the worm gods. So it shouldn't become too much of a surprise if we only killed him in the material world, but he still lives on in his own world.
Well, and then it makes sense. That's kind of where I'm theorizing is that, we should just say spinfoil, because that's basically the Destiny term. It's called spinfoil hat. So my spinfoil hat is basically Nocris and Coria are basically resurrecting, because Coria can run the simulation to simulate whatever has passed, and Nocris can resurrect them to a point where they're actually in reality. So both of them have paracausal abilities to do so. I mean, because they haven't really given us much. They've shown us the Viddoc, and they've shown us everybody comes back to life. It's kind of the Smash, everybody's here, but they're here to kill you. But
that was a given, I thought.
Yeah, because it's just like, it's really hard. I mean, even if they bring Ribbon back, that'd be interesting, because Ribbon's not really dead. Her heart's being purified right now. So...
Well, Altar are never truly dead, are they?
That's true. But, like, it's really hard to say off where Shadowkeep's going to lead, but I know they'll probably bring back some exotics. Maybe another Weapon of Sorrow would be really great. Because it is hinted that there is another Weapon of Sorrow, and we killed during, I think it was was it the Last Word or Thorn Quest? There was a single high forge master trying to make another Weapon of Sorrow.
Oh, you mean when we were trying to get the Last Word? Yeah, that was the...
Last word.
Killed the Weapon Master.
I'm assuming there'll probably be another Weapon of Sorrow, because the only weapons of sorrow that exist are Necrochasm, which is and that one he made, and Touch of Malice. The rest, but then Thorn, I think. Would Thorn be considered a touch? It's really hard to.
The original Thorn is a Weapon of Sorrow.
Yeah. So we might get another Weapon of Sorrow, and since this is very hive-based, we'll get a lot of hive-based weaponry, because I mean that's what Crota did, and also that's what Oryx did, where Oryx was more like Oryx tendrils, and then that's what Rise of Iron was more Sepa based. So I'm assuming there'd be more Witch and because Shadowkeep. That's the main point I like to bring up. Shadowkeep is where witches come from. Who's the Witch Queen? I don't know. It starts with an S. Savathun, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That's kind of what we're hinting.
Yeah, that's definitely Savathun. I think Savathun is a Witch Queen. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know. Is Shadowkeep maybe the major place where witches are formed and witches are bred? I don't know if Savathun's anywhere remotely attached to this. It's definitely not. Yeah, it's Savathun. Basically, Forsaken was the preface for Shadowkeep. Savathun brought up her plan. We see her plan. She's working in the background. She's well known. I mean, even the stuff on Titan makes me really, really nervous. Like, we're probably going to have Titan as a quest part of the main mission because Titan has a shit ton of hive. Where the fuck did they come from? Where did they come from?
Because they were trying to summon Savathun before.
Yeah, they were trying to summon Savathun.
Yep. That they were.
And there's that little whatever. People think it's a worm. People think it's like whatever that thing under the waters of frickin' Titan is.
Oh,
I
thought we called it a Leviathan, and it was basically just something. It just lives in the water. I don't think there's anything much more to that, really. But yeah, you never know, because they could bring more.
Never know, because that thing looked like a worm, but it's not a worm. I mean, keep in mind that the Leviathan existed also on Fundament as well.
Oh, yeah.
So,
True.
unless they corrupted a Leviathan and brought it over from Fundament, and then just
Summoned
dropped
there.
it in the middle, dropped it in, or summoned into Titan, that could be a thing. I mean, there's so many lore points we can bring out from just the history of Destiny. I mean, we're now learning how to use the Dark, and that's going to be a major thing probably in D3 and maybe moving on, is that the Drifter has been training us to learn how to use the Dark.
So yeah, let's actually talk about that. Like, what do you guys think is coming up for Destiny 3 and becoming, like you mentioned, like a user both light and dark, or just a dark user? What do you guys think?
For Destiny 3 in general, I used to believe that it was going to be coming sooner rather than later. But
they're going to delay it.
Yeah, it seems with Bungie stating, in the recent VidDoc, their desire to continue working on Destiny 2 and making it like an MMO experience. I really know for a fact that they're going to be supporting content for at least another year. That we know for a fact. But in terms of afterwards, I doubt that following year, with all the stuff they have planned for Destiny 2, they're going to have Destiny 3 come out. Now, I'm sure they will at some point do it, but it seems like it's still a little bit of a ways off. But when they do it, so a lot of theories regarding Destiny 3 are surrounded upon, or go based on
like a leak.
a leak that talked about the content that would in Destiny 3, which would involve being able to have darkness as a subclass, there being Guardian versus Guardian combat in control zones. There would be a more heavy concept with factions. There would be new darkness type enemies.
Maybe even a battle
races.
between dark, miniature battles between
Right.
Guardians versus
So
Guardians.
the leak itself covered basically a good chunk, and it seems plausible is that they're going kind of the Halo 3 route, where some of the Covenant kind of allied with us, so the Cabal and Fallen. Because in the background, if we're going to go a little more lore-wise, is that there's a mission, exotic quest, or start of an exotic quest that basically has Mithrax. Mithrax. It's really hard. They have a very not Slavic, but a lot of kind of that
Nordic
tone of
kind
way
of
they say it,
stuff.
but I mean,
Yeah.
it's the way that like Valshazak or no, Valshazak is that's a fucking monster, but like Tanix and Skorlas, kind of that kind of like so. His name is Mithrax, and we encounter him on Titan, and it's part of this Rat King quest. And basically, these Titan was another part of Clovis Bray, or probably
No.
just a major. It was a major. Was it a major? It was a major
it's
research.
a major research outpost. It was not controlled, or there's no relationship to Clovis Bray.
Was it Clovis or was it the?
No, neither. It's its own thing. It's its own conglomerate. We don't even know. Yeah, we don't even know what it is. We just know it's
Okay.
We just know it as whatever type. Whatever the type. What's it called again? The what was it? It was the Solarium something.
Something like that.
Yeah, we just know it as the facility. We don't know really how.
Well, regardless of that,
Yeah.
it was a big research facility, and basically this team of Fallen are basically just trying to get some tech from it, and they keep getting, oh boy, I'm stuck in a hole, kind of that kind of thing, and you kind of save them. And at the end of the mission, you basically see Mithrax fighting a Hive Knight, and if you kill the Hive Knight, Mithrax won't attack you. And he just thanks you, and he actually gives you the reactor that you're trying to get, which is basically gives power back to Titan for the people who still live there, which I don't know why.
No. We needed the reactor. It was the entire mission. So
Yeah.
it's
But Mithrax is basically this. He's a friendly Fallen that doesn't hate humanity and has been helping humanity and with the Guardian team, by the way.
Warlock
So
and Hunter,
there's
respectively.
Warlock and Hunter, and he's also created his own house because after
House
the
Light.
event, House of Light, yes, because after the fucking events of Destiny 1 and majority of it, we decimated the Fallen in every one of their houses, plus the major one, House of Wolves, and we killed Skolas. So the entire Fallen race has been just scattered, and there's this new house that appeared after Destiny 2 called the House of Dusk, and then fucking Varix gets all swole for no reason. Varix is
And then
also
he creates his own
the
house.
jail.
House of Judgment.
House Judgment.
That's right. He still calls it House of Judgment.
So we're probably, at least in Destiny 3, we'll have some part of because there's going to be a civil war between House of Light and House of Judgment. House of Dusk, I don't.
House of Dusk. It's probably going to be House of Dusk because we know what Varix wants. And then we still have to deal with House of Devils because there's like a splinter group within the House of Dusk that still kind of is loyal. That's what
Obsessed with Siva, right?
Yeah, that's what the 0 Hour mission is about. Is a group trying to reform the House of Devils wants to
the Splicers, right? I haven't played the 0 Hour yet because I was trying to get Raccoon.
They try to do a heist type thing in the old tower, where there is in a Cryptarch vault a weapon that still contains particulates of Siva. So they want to take that and then use it.
Outbreak Prime.
Not Outbreak Perfect.
Oh, Outbreak Perfected.
Yeah. So they want to get their hands on it in order to basically, because Siva can grow from just like a small portion of itself. And that's all they need to try to.
If we killed you, right, basically, Siva is this self-replicating nanite that can create anything that the person, whoever controls it, designs. But they also, at a certain period of time, due to Rasputin, became sentient. And they wiped out all the Iron Lords. It's Sans. Saladin. Lord Salad, basically. But yeah, so we're gonna probably have the Civil War as a DLC, most likely, or some sort of aspect. But the main meat of D3 and coming D3 is going to be post-campaign. There's a cutscene in Destiny 2 where Gull basically traps the Traveler in this giant cage and strips her light, and then the Traveler wakes up, says, "What the fuck? Why am I in chains?" and breaks out of said chains and kills Gull after Gull died and was more in, because he had no ghost, so he just turned into a giant ball of blood and kills Gull, and that woke up. Because of that, it sent a giant pulse of light throughout the entire galaxy and made of the solar system, and it touched these ships. These ships are giant pyramid ships. These ships are most likely the darkness, and the darkness, based on this is entirely a leak, and it may or may not be true. This guy kind of had some accuracy sometimes. That they are a race called the Veil. The Veil are basically the darkness. They are the pure, or at least close enough to the darkness, and there's this entity called the Formless One, and their goal is to, as the quote-unquote darkness, is to bring back the Formless One, his things. Now, there are many races that worship this Formless One and the darkness, like the Hive and the Vex. The Fallen and the Cabal don't worship the darkness, they just have their own reasons.
They fear it.
They fear it. I mean, there's a point in time where the Cabal basically have been running from the darkness constantly, to the point where they reached Mars and then just started trying to get tired, and then we pushed them back, and then they got really desperate and they crashed a ship into Oryx's Dreadnought. That's another story, and that's a really funny story. But so what that means is that most likely the Cabal, with Callus now on the seat again, and Callus being the former emperor of the Cabal before being kicked out by like a coup, same way like how Romans kind of work, and forced on a ship that eats planets, and it just became a giant party house for him. One of his mottos is "Grow fat from strength," and
that's a good motto. That's a good motto.
It's one of the mottos for Season of Opulence is "Grow fat from strength," is that you're gaining power by growing fat with powerful gear. But there's a good point that Callus brings up, is that Callus, after his exile, went to the edge of the universe and had the encounter with the darkness. And we're still building, because this Season of Opulence is still going on, so we're still learning shit as we go. But Callus most likely had conversation with the darkness or some sort of thing, and they gave him a vision of the end, and he's basically a giant doomsayer, and he's just preparing people for the end. And during what they call the Menagerie, which is kind of the same thing as like Court of Oryx kind of activity, where you run different horde stuff. Majority of Destiny 2 stuff has been on Leviathan, which has been a major disappointment. But it's kind of introducing you to this Emperor Callus, and who's seen the darkness, who knows a bunch of stuff about the darkness and seen the end. Same thing with Drifter, kind of knows what's coming up, and he's training us to use the dark against the dark idea.
So tying. Sorry, go ahead. I was gonna say, but
I'm just saying.
Just tying to the idea of the end. You know, like we're getting to the end of our podcast now. It's been a good 2 long hours of the talk. Just talking more about the end of how things are going with Destiny right now, at least. How much time do you think you guys are going to be spending for the Season of Opulence?
Too much.
For every single available hour.
For what? For like Shadowkeep?
For Season of Opulence and then Shadowkeep, yeah.
Anything.
I'll go on vacation at end of next week, so I'll have that as a time to take a break for it. But Opulence is probably the best expansion of the entire annual pass for its content and gameplay. Like, it is honestly very enjoyable, and there's still more stuff to come out for it. So I'm fully invested in that. Shadowkeep, I'll definitely play it when it comes out, but I am curious about what exactly there's going to be content-wise, because they've been very secretive about it. So next week is Guardian Con. So the idea that a lot of people have is that at Guardian Con, they are going to showcase some new content, or at least trailer for it. Ideally, they might go over more details, such as, maybe show us like the enemies we'll be fighting, how this whole thing with like resurrected nightmares of previous bosses we killed will work, or at the very least some of the like quality of life changes that they're doing, such as they're having the Armor 3.0 system place, where basically armor and mods can apply any mods to armor. They haven't really gone into much detail into how that works. So that should be interesting. Again, issue also is that there's a lot of games coming out in the fall, so we'll see how it goes. I'll definitely, at least when it first comes out, play a lot of it, but we'll see how much that, like, continues after the fact.
Because, I mean, even just opulence, lore-wise, brings a fucking can of worms. I mean, like, Callus basically found this crown that has runes of Savathun that Savathun intentionally put, and then he bred this type of... In the raid, there's these little guys who sit in baths, and they are, like, just giant brutes. So he made one of those specifically for that crown, and he's like, I don't want to put on the crown. He's like, you're gonna put on the crown. You're gonna put on the crown. That's what you're made. That's what you're made for. And he's just like, no. And then he puts it through, and he puts it on,
and then he goes crazy.
Yep, he goes crazy.
He goes insane. He goes insane. And that's part of the raid. The raid is you go down. Callus, it basically you guys know what a menagerie is, right? It's basically a zoo that people use to study animals. So Callus has a menagerie of just different things like Vex and anything else inside the Leviathan.
It's just Vex and Hive.
Vex and no, but I think it's Fallen too.
No, there's no Fallen.
Just okay. Well, he just has these kind of things to study them. So he wants to understand how the Hive work. So I'm really excited for Season Opulence and where it brings along, like, on the story, because Callus is the type of person who basically kills the scribes for telling the wrong history because he doesn't like it.
Also, and he wants commanders of every single race to exist. That's what the entire purpose was like. He literally captured hives solely for making those hives, like, loyal to him, and
he indoctrinated Vex.
Yeah, and he tried to indoctrinate Vex, which is hilarious. But obviously, none of them want to listen to him. So this little menagerie is basically a killing field for us, so that we can prove to him that we can be loyal to His Imperial Majesty.
And then just the overall menagerie in itself, he makes fun of people. He, like, there's a point in the menagerie, like, strike is called the mockery, and he just makes fun of people. He called Shin Malphur a charlatan.
Good God!
My favorite was when it goes into what's that thing called? We have to do the entire lap around properly.
The gauntlet.
The gauntlet, yeah. So at the gauntlet, he literally, one of his quotes was, "This place I built for my ace to find: agile, nimble, powerful, and thoroughly dead." Yeah,
damn.
He died.
God damn. Okay.
This is such an interesting character, and them doing Season of Opulence on this, like the way they've handled content map, at least for the past thing. Season of the Forge was kind of boring, but it gave good content drop, good weapons. But like when it came out of Drifter and basically who the 9 are, because that is a big question that I will go over a later time. But like they went over the 9, they went over what the Hive's next plan is, how to control the dark, and now this is going over like, we're coming up to the darkness and like we're getting ready, and Callus just wants to save his own ass by hiring all these people and calling his shadows, but then he keeps killing all the shadows that fucking protecting his ass. He's just like he's a dumb ruler, just sits on a chair and just sips wine, but he has a big influence. That's basically Thanos. He's Thanos.
Before he does anything. Yeah.
Thanos. He's Thanos, basically, who doesn't do shit and just wants everybody to do things for him. And we're getting close to it, and then we have... I'm really curious on how Rose is going to fit into the equation, and how the fuck that Callus got his hands on Rose in the first place. Because...
Well, I mean, just like he got all his other guns, he basically scavenged them from junk from the end of the wars. It's ridiculous. Like, you know, half of the weapons that were given out in the raid were basically just recovered awoken weapons of the same name, just calcified. Like
not the raid weapons, menagerie weapons.
Well, both raid weapons too.
Well, the raid weapons have high runes all over them, so that's the unique thing about them.
No, that's a unique thing. But did you notice that they were all former awoken weapons? Like they're literally the same weapons that you would get from playing Prison of Elders. Like the rewards, like Khalsa Noblesque was originally called Hygeia Noblesque, and that's a scout rifle you got from playing Prison of Elders. And then
that's funny.
Yeah, and the same was the I think it was like Bane of Sorrow was Bane of Wolves. Which was also another one, and then there was what was the fusion rifle called?
Not sure.
No, yeah, but either way, all these weapons are literally reskinned like original weapons from D1 that were just like corrupted with hive magic, and that's what he wanted to use to basically empower his new hive army. But obviously that failed miserably.
Yeah, so we're getting and I'm like, because is there any stuff like basically us visiting the 9 or anything else for opulence? Because I haven't really touched opulence that much. I've done one random option.